What's this? A letter for me.
Welcome to another episode of Remember the Great Sports Through the Mail Thursdays. Today I'm going to open 3 envelopes that I recently got back and profile each of the individuals that signed autographs for me. So we're going to jump right into this. And the first one is postmarked from Georgia, and it is former Atlanta Falcon great Scott Case on 1, 2, 3, and a 4th dual card with Eric McMillan. And hopefully I'll be able to get Eric McMillan to maybe sign this one as well. So let me tell you a little bit about Scott Case and his career in football. Scott Case, an Oklahoma native, played his high school football in Oklahoma. While I was in high school, he actually was a running back, and he enrolled in college at Northeastern Oklahoma A&M College, where he played his first 2 years of football as a free safety. After his sophomore season, he transferred to the University of Oklahoma, where he was named the starting cornerback, registering 56 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 8 pass defenses. As a senior, he switched to free safety and tied a school single-season record with interceptions with 8 his senior year. After his senior season, he was drafted in the 2nd round by the Atlanta Falcons in the 1984 draft, and he immediately joined the Atlanta Falcons, and he was actually drafted as well in the 1984 USFL draft as well by the Oklahoma Outlaws, however decided to sign with Atlanta. He became a starter as a strong safety in his 2nd year, quickly establishing himself as a hard hitter while registering 95 tackles and 4 interceptions. In 1986, he was moved to right cornerback to help him play under control and avoid mistakes, finishing with 4 interceptions and 34 pass defenses. The next year, he struggled with a shoulder, neck, and ankle injury, starting in just 10 games, registering just 1 interception and 36 passes deflected. In 1988, he would bounce back, and he would be selected to play in the Pro Bowl for the first time in his career, recording 65 tackles and leading the league with 10 interceptions that year. The next year, although he played in 14 games, he suffered a stretched ligament in his right foot and sprained his left knee, and it just limited to just 8 starts the following season in 1989. In 1990, new head coach Jerry Glanville moved him to free safety. And there he registered 170 tackles, 3 interceptions, 7 passes defended, and 3 quarterback sacks, and 5 quarterback pressures and 2 fumble recoveries. In 1991, he posted 162 tackles, and he helped the Atlanta Falcons make the playoffs for the first time since 1982. In 1992, he would appear in just 12 games due to an injury again, but he would bounce back in 1993, where he would start 16 of 16 games for the Falcons as free safety. In 1994, he would be relegated to basically a backup role, spending time as a defensive back for the Falcons, and only started 3 games that year for the Falcons. Well, at the age of 33, he decided to leave the Atlanta Falcons for the first time after an 11-year career with them, and he signed as a free agent with the Dallas Cowboys in 1995. Well, this proved to be a pretty good move for Scott Case because the Dallas Cowboys would go on to win the Super Bowl that year, and Scott Case would get his first Super Bowl ring as a member of the Dallas Cowboys. After his career in the NFL with the Cowboys, he hung up the cleats after winning the Super Bowl, so no better place to win but on top. And he moved back to Georgia, where he became partners with a former teammate, Tom Pridemore, in a construction company, which he still helps operate today. His daughter, sports run in the family, his daughter actually played collegiate softball at the University of Alabama. Very cool to get Mr. Case back. I'd never gotten his autograph before, but I remember him being in the backfield with Deion Sanders, which everybody knows who Deion Sanders is. Obviously, this guy was a workhorse for a long time for the Falcons, and it's very neat that at the end of his career, he was able to get his Super Bowl ring, as a member of the Dallas Cowboys. So, thank you very much, Mr. Case, and hopefully we'll get Eric McMillan here maybe to sign this one and complete that card, and we'll move on to the next one. All right, this next one's postmarked from Los Angeles, California, and this is one of the best as well. This is a return from safety. Dennis Smith on 1, 2, 3, and a 4th. And Dennis Smith is hands down probably one of the most underrated players from that era. He was a great player for a long time for the Denver Broncos, and he arguably should be in Canton's Hall of Fame in my opinion. So let me tell you a little bit about Dennis Smith, the great Denver Bronco, and his career in football. Dennis Smith, a California native, attended high school at Santa Monica, California, and later went to play collegiately with the USC Trojans in college. By his senior season, he was an All-American at USC in 1980. He played in 2 Rose Bowls for the Trojans during his time there. He played in the secondary, which would include future Hall of Famer Ronnie Lott and also Minnesota Vikings great Joey Browner and himself as one of the greatest USC backfields ever assembled. Smith was a consensus All-American choice as he led her 4 times in football and 3 times in track. So he was also a track star while in college. While in college, he posted 205 career tackles, had 16 interceptions for USC. Smith was drafted in the 1st round by the Denver Broncos in the 1981 draft. His first year in the league in 1981, Smith appeared in all 16 games for the Broncos, starting just 4 of them. The following year, he became the starter for the Broncos. However, an injury shortened his season in 1982. Well, he would bounce back in 1983, and he would appear in 14 games for the Broncos that year, establishing himself as a solid defensive back in the backfield for the Broncos. Well, Smith would continue to be the Broncos' go-to guy in the backfield for basically the next decade. Smith's career with the Denver Broncos lasted from 1981 to 1994. He was established as one of the hardest hitting safeties in the NFL, which was later held by his protege, Steve Atwater, which I've shown on this channel before, who also joined him in the backfield. During his career, Smith was voted to play in 6 Pro Bowls following the 1985-86 season, 89-91, and 93 seasons. He was named All-American Football Conference AFC in 1984 and 1988. He played in all 3 of the Broncos Super Bowls and was named an All-Pro 4 times. Smith's career totals include 1,171 tackles, 30 interceptions, and 15 sacks. He posted a career-high sack total in 1991. He ranks 4th all-time among Denver Broncos in games played the franchise with 184. So 184 games played just as a Denver Bronco. Never played for anybody else. He is the Broncos' all-time leader in tackles. So in total, he appeared in those 184 games over, the span of 1981 to 1994 in his career. So I don't know much about what he did post-playing career. He obviously moved back to California because that's where this is postmarked. But he was, of course, added to the Denver Broncos Ring of Fame in 2001. And he was also inducted into the Colorado Hall of Fame in 2006. And this could be somebody, that was arguably one of the best at his position, along with his, former USC teammate Ronnie Lott, for the entire decade of the 80s. And for some reason, Dennis Smith is not in the Hall of Fame in Canton. So maybe one day he will be. But I'm very glad to add Dennis Smith's autograph to the collection, and we will move on to the next group. All right, so this next one's postmarked from South Carolina, and a lot of you are going to recognize this individual's last name, and especially his brother, who also played in the NFL. So who am I talking about other than Michael Dean Perry himself? On 1, 2 as a Clemson Tiger, 3 of him ironically shooting baskets as a basketball player, even though he's not a basketball player, and another one on one of these very cool Pro-Line art cards, from the early 90s. So Michael Dean Perry is the brother of William the Refrigerator Perry, who I've featured on this channel before, so definitely check that out up here in the corner, as well in the comment section below. You can also check out that video as well. So let me tell you about Michael Dean Perry and his career in football. Following the footsteps of his older brother, William Refrigerator Perry, Michael Dean Perry grew up in Aiken, South Carolina, where he attended high school, then later went to the same college as his brother, Clemson University, where he starred for the Tigers. After his collegiate career playing for the Tigers, he was drafted in the second round of the 1988 draft by the Cleveland Browns. His first year with the Browns, he would appear in all 16 games with the Browns, starting in just 2 of those. The following year, in 1989, Michael Dean would be the full-time starter for the Cleveland Browns on their defensive line. In his second season in the league as a full-time starter, Michael would become a first-time All-Pro. He would appear in his first Pro Bowl of 6 throughout his career in his second full season in the league, and he would go on to become one of the most feared individuals on the Cleveland Browns defensive line for many years to come. Michael Dean would appear in the Pro Bowl the following year in 1990 as well as 91. He did not make the Pro Bowl in 1992, but he would return in 1993 and 94. And he would not make the Pro Bowl in 1995, but would return in 1996 after he moved on to a different team. And I'll tell you about that in a second here. He spent his first few seasons with the Browns from 1988 to 94, and then he chose to join the Denver Broncos from 1995 to 1997, which in 1996 he was representing the Broncos in the Pro Bowl. During the 1997 season, he would actually split time between the Broncos, and he would actually finish out his career as a member of the Kansas City Chiefs. Overall, in his career, Michael would play in 148 games, starting 129 of them, recording 534 tackles, and recording 61 sacks, quarterback sacks, in his career, and forced 13 fumbles in his career. Michael Dean was one of the most popular players on the Cleveland Browns that in the late 80s, McDonald's actually came out with a sandwich, the MDP, that was available only in the Metro Cleveland area. The sandwich at the time was larger than any other offering made by McDonald's. It consisted of the same ingredients as a double cheeseburger. However, they added an extra patty and some bacon to the sandwich. So I don't know if anybody out there that watches my channel grew up outside of Cleveland, but if you have, definitely let me know if you remember the MDP at McDonald's. So after his playing career, Michael returned to South Carolina and retired as well. I'm not really sure what he does now in his life, but definitely one of the greatest Cleveland Browns ever to play on their defensive side of the ball. A very underrated player. I think, a lot of the press goes to his brother, who was also an excellent, defensive lineman. But Michael Dean Perry definitely was a good ball player as well, just as much as his brother. So I want to thank Mr. Perry for taking the time to sign for me. I want to thank Mr. Smith, for signing for me as well. One of the greats, that is very underrated in his career. The same can be said about Scott Case. Scott Case never played for the Atlanta Falcons, so he kind of flew under the radar, especially when you're in the same backfield as a guy like Deion Sanders towards the end of his tenure with Atlanta. But I want to thank you for taking the time. Hopefully I helped teach you about some rather obscure NFL greats from the era that I really enjoyed watching the NFL growing up. I look forward to your comments below, and as always, happy collecting.